Episode 4, Plan and Reflect.
Welcome to Not Really Hungry, the podcast that explores how to eat mindfully, lose weight, and change your life. Now here's your host, Tanya Blankenship.
Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the next habit in the Core 4 called Plan and Reflect. I personally love planning because it makes me feel like I'm in control and have a handle on everything. We know that's not actually true, but planning does give me that feeling or that sense of having everything together. The problem is I used to make the quote-unquote perfect plans and then I just wouldn't follow them because they were perfect on paper but not realistic and too hard to follow. And it just always makes me think about that Seinfeld episode where he's trying to get his car and they don't have a car even though he had a reservation. And he says,
"See, you know how to take the reservation, you just don't know how to hold the reservation. And that's really the most important part of the reservation, the holding. Anybody can just take them."
And that's totally how I was. I was like the most amazing, perfect planner ever. I just wasn't actually following the plan. Recently, when I started listening to the Fit and Fat podcast, that really helped me just let go of the need for a perfect plan. I knew that I shouldn't be trying to be perfect, but for some reason, I just couldn't get there. And that podcast just really helped me just say, you know what? You're being silly. Let go. Make a more sustainable, realistic plan. Ultimately, because I was trying to follow the perfect plan, I just wasn't doing anything because I thought I had to do everything. I thought I had to go from, eating like crap and being totally unhealthy to being like the picture perfect, follow a strict diet, work out, do all this stuff all overnight. And that's just not realistic. So once I stopped judging and trying to make everything look just right, it just became so much easier. What's the point of planning? For me, the number one thing is just that it removes stress. There's no more decision drama. There's no more impulse eating. It just makes it so much easier. So my husband and I used to have the same conversation literally every night. It was like Groundhog Day. I would call him on my way home from work and say, "What do you want to have for dinner?" And his response, "I don't know. What do you want to have?" And we'd talk for like 10 or 15 minutes and we both get really frustrated. Half the time we would end up going out to dinner because we couldn't figure it out. And I was exhausted after work and just in no shape to make that decision or to make a smart decision. So then we would just end up going out and eating bad. Another example is like, should I eat the donut or not? Can I fit it into my calories? Am I going to regret this later? There's just all these little things that run through your head when you're faced with making a food choice. But by having a plan and following the plan, you don't have any of that. There is no discussion about what to have for dinner because you decided that yesterday. There is no discussion about should I have the donut because you decided that yesterday. So it just really makes the day so much easier. Right along with that, the number 2 reason I like planning, just because it allows for better decision making. Like I mentioned, when I'm tired, I'm just awful at making decisions. And when you're in the heat of the moment and you're stressed out about something or you're smelling something, it's really hard to make the right decision in that moment. But if you've already made the decision ahead of time, when you're calm, when you're not tired or emotional, it's so much easier. And you 9 times out of 10 are going to make the better decision when you've done it ahead of time. The other thing about planning for me is that it really saves time because if you have a good plan in place, you don't have to make as many trips to the store, for example, because you knew what you wanted before you went. So you had a list and you got what you needed. And if you know ahead of time what food you're making, if there are things that need prepped on meals, you can combine things. Like maybe there's some chopped vegetables you need for multiple meals and you could do the chopping all at once or something like that. Along with the saving the time, it saves the headache of having that same conversation over and over. And my husband and I both hated it and we would both get frustrated, but we didn't know a better way at the time. Okay, so if planning's so great, like I'm telling you, then why do so many of us struggle with the planning? I think it's because of what we tell ourselves about the planning. It's not the actual planning itself. It's what we think and the story we create about planning. So one of the main things is we tell ourselves it's too hard. No, it's not too hard. You can eat tomorrow exactly what you ate today if you want to. You can eat your favorite meal. You can hit fast food. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing. The point is just write it down first. I used to make my plans really hard. I used to have like the entire week laid out in a spreadsheet, and I would literally plan every meal, every snack, what time I was having the snack. I mean, yeah, I used to make it hard, but really it doesn't have to be hard. You just write it down and then you do it. The end. Another thing we tell ourselves about planning is that it takes too long. Again, no, it doesn't. It takes a minute, 2 minutes maybe. Go open your fridge, see what's inside, decide, yeah, I'm going to eat that tomorrow, and write it down on a piece of paper. Like, that's it. It can be super fast. The thing that makes it hard or makes it take so long is just all the drama we create about it, because we start thinking, oh, that won't be good enough, or, oh, what if I don't want that tomorrow, or whatever the things are, the excuses that come into your head. Those are the things that make it feel hard. And once we can get past that, you can see that it's really not that hard. The other reason I think people struggle with planning is because ultimately they're afraid that they won't stick to it, and then they'll feel like a failure. I really feel like this might be the root of most of the excuses that we have, because nobody wants to fail, and nobody wants to feel like, well, there I go again, not sticking to a plan, right? That's a horrible feeling. And I also think we don't want to hold ourselves accountable sometimes, because if we make our plan too hard, we don't want to hold ourselves accountable to that hard plan because it sucks. I mean, nobody wants to like starve themselves and eat dry chicken and steamed broccoli forever. Like, boring, right? So if we only commit to what we're actually going to do, then it's a lot easier to stick to the plan, and you're not going to feel like a failure if you're excited about what's on your plan. Because if you like what you've planned, you're going to follow through with it. Again, we don't want to plan what we think we should do or what we think is right for a diet. We want to plan what we're actually willing to do, so then we'll actually do it and hold ourselves accountable to doing it. Once you're following a plan, then you can start looking at it and trying to find little ways to improve and maybe make it a little healthier and things like that. But the number one thing is you want to get yourself committed to following a plan and like know that you can do it and build that confidence of knowing, yeah, I can commit to something and I can stick to it and I can follow through for myself. Because so often we'll make promises to other people, whether it's a spouse, friends, kids, whatever. We make promises to them and we'll bend over backwards to make sure that we follow through with those promises. But we make promises to ourselves and we blow them off like it's nothing. You know, we might say, oh, I'm going to take a walk tomorrow. And then something happens. It's cloudy outside and you're like, yeah, I'm not feeling it. I don't know why it's so much easier for us to let ourselves off the hook, but I do really think that part of that is just being more realistic and, you know, starting small and not trying to make everything so darn perfect. It's a lot easier to stick with it and follow through. In the Core 4 method, I recommend making weekly plan and daily plans. The weekly plan is literally just a rough outline of what you're going to eat for the week. I'm done with the whole grid spreadsheet planning every moment, but it is helpful to have a basic list of, hey, these are the meals and snacks that I'm going to have this week, because it allows you to go and look and see like what you need to shop for, what you might already have in your cupboard. And it also helps you see if there's any meal prep that you could do ahead of time to help make things more convenient. So in the Core 4 planner, it also walks you through other parts of your week, like splurges, social activities, exercise or physical activity, and your goals. I do believe that it is all valuable, but at a minimum, at least plan your food. Like if you're not going to plan anything else or that feels like too much, just start with your food. The daily plans are much more specific than the weekly plans, and here is where your commitment comes into play. So like I said before, it's important to plan what you are willing to commit to doing. Your plan doesn't need to look like a diet plan. You can plan to eat whatever you want. Just make it quick and realistic and plan all of your food, even your snacks. Also plan if you're going to have a splurge that day and what it will look like. For instance, don't just say, yep, today's a splurge day. No, you need to say, I am going to have a piece of cheesecake for dessert at the restaurant tonight. And that's it. Like one piece of cheesecake, the end. Because if you make it open-ended, like my rant when I was talking about cheat meals the other day, if you just try to say like, oh, I'm quote unquote off, then it becomes like the entire day or the entire night. It's not just you go and enjoy your splurge piece of cheesecake and then move on with your life. Then it becomes like a big snowball effect of all these things. So splurges are important. They're an important part of the plan. You absolutely should plan them. But my point is, be specific with them. Plan exactly how much you intend to eat or drink if it's alcohol. Plan exactly what you will have and how much. Also plan if you're going to have activity for the day. Again, be realistic. It can be a 5-minute walk. I mean, honestly, if you're doing zero activity, it can be a 2-minute walk. It doesn't matter. Just plan it, commit to it, and try to do better than you did last week. Don't go thinking you have to run a marathon next week. Start where you're at and just do a little bit more. The Core 4 Meal Planner lays all of this out for you on the daily plan pages. And I also have a free daily plan printable on the blog. So if you don't want to get the planner, but you like the format, you can just download the free printable. But at least then that gives you all the details. I'll be sure to put a link for that in the show notes. But you don't have to use my planning format at all. I mean, literally, you can write it down on a piece of paper. It's just, you've listened to my show, you know I'm an organized, detailed person. So for me, it helps to have it all laid out in one place like that. But again, literally, you can just write it down wherever. The point is just that you write it down, because when you write it down, that's making more of a commitment to yourself and you're more likely to stick with it. So that basically goes into all the details about making the plan. But now I also want to give you a little insight on actually using the plan. First of all, if you ate something that wasn't on your plan, write it down wherever you had your plan written down so you see what you planned to do and what you actually did. And then also try to write down just some brief notes about why you went off plan. Also, write down the time you ate, because that's really helpful for reference as you're trying to learn your hunger cues. And if you're trying to look for patterns going forward, having the time of the meals or the snacks can really help. Also, assess your hunger cues before you eat, during your meal, and after you're finished with your meal. You can use the Core 4 Hunger Scale for guidance, but the key is don't just mindlessly eat whatever's on your plate. Stop and think about it. Think about how you're feeling when you're starting to get satisfied. It's okay if there's leftovers. Or if you give yourself a small portion, don't freak out that it won't be enough food. You can always get more. If you eat everything on your plate and you're still hungry, you can get more. I was completely shocked when I started eating more mindfully and I realized how small my portions were. Like, clearly I was trying to feed a family of 4, because when I look at the amount of food that I eat now and the amount that it takes me to feel full, it's very crazy how much smaller my portions are. But again, I'm totally satisfied and more satisfied than I was when I was trying to really diet and watch my calories. So I guess I naturally am taking in fewer calories because of the smaller portions, but it doesn't feel like a struggle like it did before. The other thing is you need to keep track of how much water you're drinking as you drink it. So if you're using one of my daily plans, there's cute little water glasses on there and you can just check them off as you drink it. If you're using a notebook or your own paper, whatever, just make a little note as you're drinking the water. It may seem silly, but it really does help to keep track of it. Years ago when I was on Weight Watchers and was using the paper trackers, that was one of the things they had. And then at some point they changed it and you weren't tracking water anymore. And as silly as it sounds, it really made a difference. I wasn't drinking as much water when I wasn't keeping track and checking it off. So it just kind of forces you to be mindful of it. The other thing is you should write down how much sleep you got the night before. And again, this is just really helpful in learning your patterns and your hunger cues. And, if you start having cravings, you can look back and see, oh, my sleep has been really crappy the past few nights. That could be contributing to the cravings. But if you don't have any of that information, it's kind of hard to figure out what's causing something or what's triggering you. But if you have all this data to look back on, it makes it a lot easier to figure things out. I don't remember if it was last week, a couple weeks ago, I was up on the scale a little bit. And my first thought was like, oh, why? That doesn't make sense. I'm doing everything right. Well, then I went back and started looking at my daily plans, and I saw there were several nights where I didn't get the best sleep. And then there were multiple nights where I was having a snack at like 9:30 or 10 when clearly I should have been going to bed, not eating. Just having that information to look back on once I really reflected, which we're getting to, but once I really reflected on it and noticed all of that data, then it made a lot more sense. I said, oh, well, that's probably why I was up a little bit. And then the following week I was down like, I think 3 pounds or something. So it evened out. But my point is that if you're not keeping track of that information, you have nothing to look back on to help you figure out what you can work on. So the second part of the habit is reflecting. And reflecting is really important because, like I just said, if you don't look back and evaluate how things went, you don't know what needs improvement. I really wasn't great at reflecting until recently. I would note my hunger signals, but I never really fully processed my days. Once I started using my planner that has the reflection questions built right into it, it was a lot easier for me to complete this part because it was right there. As I was looking at my daily plan, I saw those questions and it reminded me. And I guess I didn't feel like I could go on and start my next daily plan until I completed the reflections, because then that would be leaving the page not finished, which I guess you could totally do. But I couldn't. I was like, no, I have to finish this page before I go on to the next one. So that has been really helpful for me. But I do want to say the number one rule of reflecting is do not be negative. You need to look back at your day without judgment and just evaluate what went well and what didn't. You can always find something positive no matter how small. I don't care if it's like, ooh, I drank 1 glass of water today. That is a positive. That's better than 0 glasses of water. So often we tell ourselves that things aren't good enough or you should have done more. But what I'm saying is I want you to celebrate every small success. And that is something that Weight Watchers taught me, is that you always want to celebrate anything. I mean, if you decided you were going to park 4 spaces further away from the door than you normally do at work. Okay, it seems like not a big deal. It's still more steps and it will add up over time. The other thing, again, just don't put yourself down. Learn from what went wrong, but don't beat yourself up or punish yourself about it. That doesn't do any good. And I've said it before, but mean is not motivating. I think we're mean to ourselves because we think, oh, it's tough love, or it'll, be a kick in the pants, but it's not. It just makes you feel even worse because you start believing those negative things and you start believing that you're not capable of things, and that's just not true. So when you're reflecting, the things that I want you to ask yourself are, number 1, what went well? Again, like I said, you can always find something positive, so that's why I start with that. Find something positive first. Then look at what could you have done better. So maybe you didn't drink all your water, so you can say, oh yeah, I see that I only had 6 glasses of water today. I'm shooting for 8. So tomorrow, maybe I'll be more mindful about getting the water in. That's all I want you to do. I don't want you to use this as a chance to consider yourself a failure, because that is not the goal at all. And then the third question is, what will you do differently tomorrow? Like I just said in the water example, like once you figure out what didn't go great, then you know what you can work on for the following day. After you're done with your reflecting, you can move on to your next daily plan. Then at the end of the week, I also have weekly reflections, which really take you back and make you think about your entire week. Like I said, when I was doing that to figure out my gain, it helped me to go and glance back at my daily plans to see what I had done each day. That gives you a really good picture and really helps you pick out things that could have been better. Again, be honest, but be kind. Imagine that you're talking to your best friend or your daughter. Just have understanding for yourself. You are not going to be perfect right out of the gate or ever, honestly. So give up that idea of perfection and just do the best you can. So for your weekly reflections, think about what went well for the week and what you're proud of for the overall week. Then I want you to think about what was hard during the week and why it was hard. Was it hard to stick to your plan? Or was it hard because things were stressful at work? Or was it hard because your schedule was super busy? Whatever it is, take a minute to process that. Think about why it was hard. And if there's any way you can make it feel less hard when you're presented with that situation in the future. Then I want you to take a look and see if you were able to stick to your plans and why or why not. If you weren't able to stick to your plan and you look back and you see that it's because you planned food you don't like, well, ding, 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 there you go. You need to evaluate why you are or are not sticking to your plans so that you can improve on that. Then I want you to look and see if you noticed any physical changes this week. It could be the weight on the scale. It could be measurements. It could be your pants size, or not even the size, but if you're in the same size and they're starting to feel a little baggy. The other thing is it could just be your energy. I mean, if you notice that you have more energy or you're less groggy or your brain feels more focused, I mean, those are all positive changes that have nothing to do with the scale. So take time to really look at that. So often we get just hung up on that number on the scale that we forget about all the other positive things that are happening in our life. And honestly, the scale is a number and it's one point in time. It does not reflect all the effort you're putting in. So it's really important to find other ways to measure your success so that if the stupid scale isn't moving, you don't get discouraged because you know there's other benefits that you're seeing. The final thing in the weekly reflections is just like with the daily, think about the next week, the week ahead, and think if there is anything that you're ready to change for the following week. So if you've been having chips with your lunch every day, maybe you're ready to swap in some raw veggies once or twice a week or something like that. It doesn't have to be a huge overhaul, but just think about if there's any small change you want to make for the next week. And if there's not, that's fine. If what you're doing is working and you're happy, you don't have to change anything, but it's important to think about it ahead of time. Once you reflect on your entire week, it's a great time to really think if there's anything that you want to do differently. So once you're done with your weekly reflections, then it's time to just move into planning your next week. And then you just repeat. Again, don't make it harder than it has to be. I know I've been talking a lot about planning just because I really wanted to explain my thought process in putting these things together. But really, I mean, even my weekly reflections, I may spend, 10 minutes on it, maybe, if that. I mean, it really doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process if we don't make it that way. Beyond the daily and weekly reflections that I have built into the plan, you might also find it helpful just to journal about other challenges that you're encountering. I mean, there are some things that go deeper than, the little box on the daily plan. So you can use the Progress Not Perfection journal that I created, or you can use any notebook or piece of paper. It doesn't matter. The journal that I have does have 60 different questions that will prompt you to really get you thinking about some deep issues and hopefully get things flowing, but it's not necessary. I mean, you can do any piece of paper, any notebook. It's just writing down your thoughts sometimes helps you peel back the layers and figure out the root of an issue more so than just thinking it over in your head. We have so many things going on in our minds that I just feel like it's hard to really focus. Because you might be thinking about a problem and then out of nowhere you think, oh shoot, I need to stop and get milk. Or, oh, I didn't schedule his doctor's appointment. Or, oh, I hope I'm not late to work. Like all these things just come flowing in when you're trying to think about something. So I just think by taking the time to write it out, it helps focus your brain and it controls your attention span a little bit and helps you really dive into an issue. That's why where I see the benefits of journaling. I don't, sit and write for hours by any means, but I do really think if there's something that you're struggling with, processing it that way can be super helpful. So in order to help motivate you to implement this habit, I am actually going to run a planning challenge in the private Facebook group. It's going to be a 21-day challenge, and all the details will be discussed in the Facebook group. So if you're interested, make sure you join the Facebook group. I will put a link in the show notes, and the show notes can be found at notreallyhungry.com/episode 4. But ultimately, it's going to be a way to hold everyone accountable for their daily and weekly plans. We'll be posting them, discussing them, and there will be prizes at the end, so you don't want to miss it. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. all about the details of planning and reflecting. And I really hope that even if it's a challenging thing for you, that the benefits that I talked about will motivate you to at least give it a try. All right, guys, until next time, remember, eat mindfully so you can lose weight and change your life.
Thanks for listening to the Not Really Hungry podcast. If you have any questions or comments, please email podcast@notreallyhungry.com or leave a voicemail at 330-595-4662. If you want to hear more from Not Really Hungry, check out the blog at notreallyhungry.com, where you'll find even more ways to eat mindfully, lose weight, and change your life.